I would like to bring the issue up real quickly.
Okay, I think Mike had a burial request and so did I. So is Mike in the chambers?
Yes,
Go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a call from Lori McDonald, and she was requesting assistance for the burial of her son out in Seattle. Her son is just a descendant, not a member. But to get that $600, they have to have the council okey dokey on it. And so that's what I'm asking for.
Okay, are there any objections to that?
none that I see.
Okay, the request I had was, it was from Irma Haynes and the two children
Oh, no.
in Missoula were descendants of this tribe. And so Irma was asking if we could provide that burial assistance for that family as well. The Evelyn Sandberg Gardapi and I think it's Namus Sandberg Gardapi, age 3 and 5. So are there any objections to that? Okay, Jen, if you could get those wheels turning.
Just one clarification.
What was that?
A clarification
Go ahead.
on the policy. Does it state anything about off reservation? For Mike's request, he's a member off the reservation, Mike?
Yeah, Lori is off
I don't know.
reservation. She's making the request for her son, but the policy on reservation is for, what is it? An enrolled member may request with tribal council approval be granted up to $600 to assist in the burial of a non-enrolled family member. Doesn't have on or off.
Oh, okay, because at one time it did, and I was just gonna make a motion if it required a waiver. Okay,
The other assistance is the 500 for a resident community.
Okay. So if there's no objection to that, Anita, did you want to go ahead with your issue?
Yes, Madam Chair, I guess that I need something clarified. When we had asked Tribal Forestry to pick up a couple of trailers of wood for the elderly program, I assume there was no income guidelines to that, being that it's a tribal asset. And an individual told me that they were being made, I guess that they were denied through, because they have to go through LEAP. And I had thought that the wood that we had put over here was for tribal member elders. So if we could get that clarified. Does anybody else remember that? When forestry brought the 2 loads of wood over here to the elders program? That's a tribal asset, right? It doesn't have to go under federal guidelines or anything else. It appeared to me if you're an elder that's going to be 92 years old here in a couple of weeks, you would be qualified. But anyway, if we could get that looked into, Madam Chair, and find out.
Yeah, I wasn't at that meeting when that action was taken or the request was made. So are you asking for clarification from the minutes or what?
Or clarification from the department, because we had just been told by Tribal Forestry, Tony and them, that they were bringing in 2 loads of firewood for the elders. And then we were told that they had got it up here and it was available.
So you're asking for clarification from the elders program?
Yes, as to what their eligibility is, because it's a tribal asset. We don't have to go through federal eligibility.
Okay,
Give a tribal member a cord of wood.
okay. Jen is gonna look into it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Anita. Okay. With that, it looks like we have a few staff members on. And we have the Kootenai Elders on, so. Where do we want to start? Vernon, did you have specific issues
Well,
elders brought up?
no, just some of the clarifications that they wanted, and they was kind of interested in, they had, Tom McDonald had met with us. I know he has an appointment right now, but Tom McDonald had met with us last week and had talked about some closures that he was going to bring forward, and so they were in agreement with it, but they also was wondering about Jetty as well. But aside from that, I'll leave it to the elders to bring up their issues.
Okay, we did make some of those regulation changes this morning, but I don't believe Jetty was on there. Les, did you want to go over the ones that were in the action?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, to answer Vernon's question, yes, the two areas that they had requested, the Chief Cliff area above west of Highway 93, north of 28, and east of the Browns Road. That was the Hog Heaven area. And the second one was the Irvine area, everything south of Highway 28 with the Irvine road numbering system. And the third one was the Twin Lakes area.
Okay, I thought that there was part of the discussion was also had to do with the Lozo area as well. Was that not included in that?
We didn't have that included as part of the discussion. I did just recently, a few minutes ago, emailed you what was presented to council. See if you want to continue that discussion with council.
Okay, yeah, yeah. Much of the discussion that we had at the elders meeting, was about the closures, and one of the strands was about the Lozo area, and discussion was, asking how it was initially the Lozo primitive area, like the Jocko primitive area, and then it was changed to a special management unit, which allowed for a lot more things to go on in there. Right now there's a lot of traffic, especially during hunting season, there's a lot of traffic from off the reservation that comes down through there. And so they wanted to have that included in the closure areas. Yeah, and I did receive your email, Les, and forwarded it to Danielle to have her forward to all of the elders. So they should be receiving that document. So thank you.
Madam Chair.
Leonard, go ahead.
Yeah, I specifically asked Tom about the jetty area, and his comment when he came back is that everything north of Flathead River would be closed in the last meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Levi.
also Buffalo Bridge, I was informed not too long ago or today that, well, there was a limousine that was trashed up at Hubbard Dam, and they moved that from up there down to Buffalo Bridge and set it ablaze. And it's sitting down there right now. And that's why we wanted that area closed too. That's just showing how disrespectful they are of our land. So it's there today. Thank you.
Is there anyone from Fish and Game on? Law and Order?
Madam Chair, I was informed from a game warden this morning. Thank you.
Okay.
And Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I think I mentioned, or one of the elders mentioned about Buffalo Bridge and Sloan's should be closed or monitored for illegal trespass and dumping of garbage and stuff. Those two places are really getting hammered, and we need to do something pretty fast to try to get that ground to start healing in those areas. Thank you.
Yeah, we did discuss that this morning, closing those areas as well. Is Clayton on here?
He's on PTO this week.
So before we get too heavily involved in it, if there was, I was kind of hoping that the new managers that were hired could introduce themselves to the elders as well. But I mean, we could wait till next elders meeting as well. But if they were going to be on, then that would be cool.
Okay, yeah, it looks like we have 3 of them on. Greg Spar is the Director of Financial Management. Greg, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon to the Kootenai Elders Cultural Committee. Can you hear me all right? All right. So my name is Greg Spar. I've been the cash flow and investments manager for the last year. I bring a background of financial management and investment planning and really fiduciary money management to the organization, as well as organizational planning. And I oversee the IIM program. I oversee the economic development program. I oversee accounting and finance and budget development, as well as our controller's office and property and supply. And I look forward to answering any questions that you might have or being of assistance to any of you as I might be. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. We also have Lisa Shorts on.
Afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Shorts. I'm the Director of Administration. I oversee facilities and maintenance, the Information and Technology Department, records management, and also personnel. I've worked for the tribe for close to 30 years now and have experience in each one of the departments that I oversee at this point. I'm very eager to get started. This has been a goal of mine for about close to 30 years. So I'm very glad to have achieved that goal and be able to serve the tribe in this capacity.
Thank you, Lisa. Patty?
Good afternoon. My name's Patty Hibbler. I'm on week 3 here at the tribe. So I am overseeing, all right, let's see if I get this correct. It's a test. So I'm overseeing tribal health, DHRD, enrollment, tribal defenders, more.
ECS?
Early childhood, law and order, and one more.
Education?
Thank you, education. I had a meeting with them this morning. So I've really been spending the last couple of weeks getting out, meeting all of the directors and trying to meet the division directors and getting an orientation on those particular services and how those are implemented for our tribal members within the tribal government. So I'm very glad to be here and be home.
Yes, welcome home, Patty. And
Thank you.
James, did you want to say anything?
No, thanks.
Okay. James Steele Jr. got sworn in this morning for the remainder of Fred Matt's term. So he'll be here with us through the end of 2021.
I guess one thing I'd like to express my condolences to the Kayai family over Lou's passing. And, you know, I had my mom pass on a month ago and cousin that same day. So it was a little tough.
Okay, thank you. Other issues you guys want to discuss, want information on?
Whoa. Oh. This is Junior.
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead. I lost my Zoom.
Okay. Speaking of the newly appointed council person, what was the thought behind it taking so long for filling that position when council knew when Mr. Matt resigned, what day he was resigning? Why did you guys wait so long as a group or individually?
I will let the council that voted for that respond. I think Bing and I were the ones that were opposed, so anybody? Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With the resigning of Fred Matt, I advocated from the very beginning that the position be immediately filled. I continued to advocate that throughout the time.
And also Shelley and members of the council, and thanks for the question, Leonard. But yeah, that is a good question. That is something that we should have done immediately after Fred resigned. So I know it's taking a little longer than most, but we realized we had to do it. So although there's only just a couple weeks left, we still have work to do, and we still have that constitutional mandate to keep 10 people on council.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Leonard.
I guess that's why I bring it up, Len and Mike, is if it's constitutional mandate, someone should have made a motion prior to or at the time of Freddie's last day. You know, you're sitting up there as council and you guys know what the Constitution says, tribal constitution, that you guys should act accordingly instead of waiting so long, just, you know, a month and a half before its term's up, is why I bring it up. Thank you.
Yeah, Leonard, you're absolutely right. That was our mistake.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Carol.
at the time that Fred resigned, I thought we went over it fairly well, but sometimes we make mistakes. It's not intentional. And so when Mike brought it forward, this just a month back, realized what we'd done. And so we just fulfilled our obligation, and it wasn't intentional or anything. And I, just want to make sure that, some people do make mistakes, and sometimes we don't always recall everything in the Constitution. And that's why it requires us to go over it quite often. So thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to comment? Okay.
Oh,
Go ahead, Junior.
yeah, I needed some information on why wasn't Indian preference used on that finance position. We had someone in there for years. And you guys' new system allowed that Indian preference not be used. And I'm wondering why the administration of CSKT would do something like that. These people work many years for the tribes. Their opportunity comes up, and what do? We hire a non-tribal member. Indian preference, that doesn't mean anything anymore, it looks like. So I'd like to know why. Thank you.
Thanks, Junior. The supervisor of these positions isn't here today. He's out sick, so I know he went through a pretty extensive interview process. I think all of these individuals had at least 2 interviews. So council wasn't involved in those interviews. So I really can't speak to that. And like I said, Rick is out today sick, so.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Nada.
So can you guys tell us if Indian preference is anything? Is it still there or no? Or just on certain positions or what? I have some kids in college, my grandkids. Now, do I continue to push them to finish so they can come back and work for the tribe, or should I tell them to start looking outside of the tribe?
So there is a tribal member preference within 69D. And I guess I'll defer to Lisa as the director overseeing personnel to answer this.
Yes, we still have Indian preference. Basically, anyone can apply. Generally, what will happen is the tribal member will have the preference over a descendant, non-member, member of another tribe. But yes, the tribal preference is still there.
Just for certain positions?
No, tribal preference is there for all positions. There are the ability to hire without advertising, and that would be internal. So if you have a vacant position and you have someone that's already working for the tribes, they have the ability to, I guess the closest term would be to transfer a person into that position. But if you're in reorganization, then you don't have to advertise, but generally to my knowledge, all of our advertisements show tribal preference.
Go ahead, Dan.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Nada, I guess I would continue to encourage your family members to pursue an education. There's absolutely nothing that should prohibit them from doing that. And yeah, I would continue to encourage. I imagine everyone on this Zoom would be the same way as well. Lisa could probably chime in as well, but there are some positions that need certain qualifications or skills or education that needs to be necessary to fill those positions. So no, I definitely would encourage your family members to continue to be educated, and whether that's through high school, trade school, college, or whatever is necessary to fill positions, I would continue to encourage that.
Eric,
Go ahead, Levi.
whatever happened in the 80s when they said by the year of 2000 we would have 100% tribal employees employed here? What happened with that?
I think that was a nice statement, but I don't know that there was a plan to ever follow through. Carol, you've been here since the 80s, right? Can you answer that?
I've been on Earth since 1959, so let me see what I can do. I remember when Lawrence Kenmill made the motion to do that in the old council chambers, and it was an unrealistic at that time to think that we could fill every job with tribal members due to the fact, the reason why I thought it was unrealistic, because we didn't have the scholarships, we didn't have the money to send kids to school to achieve it, and we hadn't identified all the positions. And to this day, I know that we've identified positions and we have a scholarship program, but there's still not enough money to send people for every single, and there has to be a desire by the individual to hold the position. So I know we tried it, and I think it was maybe later 2008, 9, it kind of went by the wayside because we knew we weren't going to achieve it. But now that we have, the water rights money coming in, maybe it's time to put that back in there, but I still think it's unrealistic. I mean, we can try to achieve it, and that would be our goal, but you just never know who's got the qualifications. And with all these grant programs and all the money that this tribe brings into this organization, those things have to be followed, and you have to have the the credentials and the qualifications to make sure those things are followed through. Otherwise, we have to return the money. So I think we're just doing what we can. And when people do go off and get their education and come back and meet the qualifications of the job that's required, then we fill it with tribal members, but we haven't been able to achieve that.
Lisa, were you gonna add something?
I was pretty much going to reiterate what Carol was just saying, that, yeah, we need to make sure that we have qualified applicants. That tends to be a lot of the positions that are filled are more of the technical positions that require some kind of degree or so many years of experience, and we just haven't had the tribal applicants to fill.
So I can think back of when I was on the it was called the Ed Part Committee, and we looked at all the educational programs that a tribal member could have access to, from Head Start to the college, Kicking Horse, public schools, and we volunteered to, you know, look at all those. And one of the recommendations that we came up with was that personnel do a survey of all the positions that were currently held by non-members, and then make a plan to go forward. But council never endorsed that plan at the time. That was, I don't even remember the year, but I worked at Kicking Horse. I sat on that committee as a representative of Kicking Horse. And that's something that, you know, we could still do as a starting point. But go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I was just going to comment. I think we all understand that about the qualifications and years of experience. We discussed it at length at our elders meeting. And my point and question was, when do we get our tribe members that experience in those years in any particular position if we never ever hire them? And if they're not hired on the outside in the greater areas of hiring people. And if they do, then they move off the reservation, or even if they live off, they're not going to come back, because they see time and time again when the tribe has a position up, but they still don't pick the tribal member. You know, how does that tribal member get experience that our own tribe isn't willing to give them? I think that's the problem we're running into when these young adults and even older adults try to come back and get a job, they're overlooked. And I think that's the point of the elders committee, is how we're going to curtail that to get our tribe members hired. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Leonard. Another thing that the Ed Part committee recommended that you just reminded me of was setting up apprenticeships and internships for all these kinds of jobs, so that we could have, you know, for example, within the culture committee, have someone apprentice, the botanist or whoever, so that, you know, they could learn from the elders. And then also, you know, increase job shadowing experiences, because how do people know what they want to be when they grow up if they don't have that exposure to some of those areas? I always think about that native astronaut. I think he was Northern Cheyenne. Like, how did that ever happen, that, you know, that he decided on that field?
Chair.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I think, Levi, I appreciate the question. One of the things that when that statement was made back in the 80s or the 90s, when that was done, we didn't ever set out to measure what that meant. You know, okay, 100% tribal membership, but how far have we come? Are we 80%, 70, 60? Where are we at with hiring tribal members for all of our positions? We know it's not 100%. We all know that. But how far have we come? I mean, are we 40, 30, 20? You know, I think it would be nice to know, how many tribal members do we actually have employed for the tribes, for, you know, the different tribal companies, the college, and then how many tribal members are self-employed or working for other businesses or got their own business that they're doing. You know, we need to know how big is our working age population? What does that look like? You know, we probably have retired folks. We have probably some disabled folks that might not be in that, but you know, I think we just don't, we have never really measured it to know exactly what, you know, how far are we from the 80s? Are we closer to the 100% mark? It would be nice to know that, and it would help us to have a better understanding from the 80s till now, you know, how many more tribal members do we have employed and how far do we need to go? So that's always been something in my mind that we should measure it somehow.
Thank you, James. I think that's information that Lisa could get for us pretty easy, and then we could set a plan to work towards that.
Madam Chair.
Carmel?
Thank you. I was just thinking about how I think what hasn't been mentioned yet about this ordinance and the preference is the question of whether you apply that preference at the time that you're screening applications or at the time that you're selecting through among your finalists. And that's been the difficult question. I think that, you know, when the tribal council, for example, we've had discussions when we were doing some hiring, we were also, you know, everybody kind of had a different way of looking at it. And I heard some of the discussion with the last elders meeting. So I know that you guys are all concerned as well, as we are about, you know, how to make sure that we're bringing our educated membership into positions where they can get the most meaningful experience. So Lisa, I don't know if that's something that you can put into the discussion as far as how is that preference applied, when and how. I think that'd be good. And then, you know, we have the priority set and hopefully more work to do that will help make sure that all of our tribal members who want to work are working. And I think that's really important, you know, a big part of what has to be settled too, as far as, you know, what does that mean? What kind of developmental work needs to be done to get the apprentices or the positions put in place? Thanks for the input.
Loretta?
Thank you. I just wanted to make a suggestion. I know that I completely agree that education is really important, but also on the other side of that, there's a lot of baby boomers that are getting near retirement, and experience says a lot. Having experience says a lot. And I just would like to suggest that maybe, and I know that one of your department heads are actually considering this as getting a trainee to work under them. You know, someone that has a lot of the qualifications, maybe not all of them, but working towards moving into that position. I think that that's really important because, like I said, experience goes a long way as well as education. But if you've got an experienced person that's readily available and already working for the tribe, maybe consider having them train under somebody that's getting ready to retire. Just a comment. Thank you.
Thank
Yeah,
you, Levi.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Levi.
back in the 80s, as our other discussion was, that was part of the, what was talked about. If there was no eligible tribal members and you hired a tribal, they were to train somebody for that position. So in so many years, and yeah, that was already discussed. Thank you.
Thank you, Levi. Lawrence?
Yeah, I want to bring something up. When you talk about 100% tribal membership employment, that was a realistic thought that was going on, because what we were looking at is having SKC along with personnel do an evaluation of what staff we had and what was going to be needed for educational purposes. And the college is supposed to gear up to start developing our classes that would fit in, which they are doing now. It's after the 2000 mark, but at the same time, they are progressing. When we did that, we realized that we had a lot of tribal members that we were losing to outside sources that we couldn't compete with. We couldn't compete salary-wise or compete with the longevity of the program because we were dependent on grants and things of that sort, which were maybe 2 years or 3 years, where they were going into an area where they were getting seniority and better pay than anybody. When we brought this up the last elders meeting, what we were looking at is, okay, you had tribal members that were qualified, were being interviewed. Where does that Indian preference or tribal preference come into play? Because we had some individuals that were being interviewed that had longevity within that program, that knew the workings that were needed for that program, but yet still did not receive that Indian tribal preference. And that's what we were looking at, is when does that tribal preference come in? Because we saw individuals that were being interviewed that were tribal members that did not get the job. I'm not saying they made a bad choice, but what I'm saying is that the tribal preference should have played a part within that department, so that we would have some individuals that we have allegiance from. I will say that, tribal members have an allegiance to this tribe more than anybody else in the world. A non-tribal member does not. They're looking for someplace else to go besides here. And that's why we wanted that Indian preference to be defined, so that people will know that if they're going to be looking for a job here and we want them here, how are they going to be given that priority? Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Okay, I'd like to comment.
Go ahead, Vernon.
Yeah, there's statements being made that aren't quite accurately in the know. Some of the, well, first of all, tribal preference should be applied when all of the other factors are equal. And that's something that needs to be clarified through policy, because if that's the playing field we're talking about, that's one thing. But if and the other part of it was if a tribal member meets minimum qualifications, then they should be hired. Those were the two discussion points that I recall, was that, if a tribal member meets minimum qualifications, then is the person's hands tied as far as hiring them over a non-tribal member who may not only meet the minimum qualifications but far exceed them, and so that's something that really should be clarified in personnel policy. And the other part is that we weren't part of those interviews. And, Mr. Spar, with respect, I personally had the assumption in my mind, and I even stated it in open meetings with council, who I assumed was going to get that position. But I certainly wouldn't want to second guess the person who did the extensive interviews and whose decision it was. We weren't part of those interviews. We don't know specifically what was being looked for that would fit the position the best. We don't know a lot of the things that go into that position, and so we're kind of second guessing from the stands rather than in having information in the know. So, I agree with tribal member preference, but I think tribal member preference should be applied when all other things are equal, just like veterans preference, and so that's and that was my input into the meeting the other day. But I just wanted to make council aware that it was a vibrant discussion, but it was by no means a consensus. So anyway, just wanted to put in my 2 bits.
Thank you, Vernon. Lisa, did you want to address this? I know Sharma asked for that clarification early as to when tribal member preferences applied.
I believe it's applied when it's advertised, so it would be based on application at that point. Again, I believe they will receive all the applications, and if you have an influx of tribal member applicants, they are the ones that are selected for interview. If you have more that, if you have not very many applicants, then you would end up being able to open it up more to non-members.
Okay, so I think to Vernon's point, if the tribal member and the non-member are equally qualified, then the Indian preference or the tribal member preference kicks in. So
I'll have to verify that with the ordinance.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I guess that was discussed quite a bit at our last meeting, and that was my point, is when does it get equal if that tribal member never gets hired any place, whether it's outside the tribes or within the tribes? They're having a difficult time getting in the door to get experience. I think you touched on a little bit about shadowing, job shadowing. We got to do something to get these tribal members, as you and Vernon and a few others put it, that on equal footing. My concern was they never get equal footing because we don't even give it to them. So that's what we got to look at. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yep, thank you, Leonard. And that was to my point earlier about what the Ed Part Committee had recommended was, let's get those apprenticeships out there, those internships, let's do job shadowing, let's do all of that so we can, be ready for our succession planning, because us baby boomers are getting up there.
Excuse me.
Go ahead, Junior.
Yeah. This took place here. And to me, there's a lot of good words here, but it was done wrong. that tribal preference? You know, why did Rick and whoever do this? Did you guys question why? Anybody question it? And what are you guys gonna do about it?
So we took tribal council out of that arena, and we leave it to our executive to hire the directors. And like I said, they went through a pretty extensive interview process. I think there was 2 rounds of interviews. Some had written tests, if you will. I'm not sure what all went into those specific interviews, but we followed the new ordinance, which we spent a lot of time going through 69C, turning it into 69D. So I think there was question about the tribal member preference, but you know, we trusted Rick to follow the ordinance. Go ahead, Lisa. You're muted.
Looking in the ordinance, it says the tribal preference, priority for hiring all classes of employment will be on the basis of necessary qualifications for the position in accordance with the following preference: enrolled members of CSKT, first generation descendants of enrolled CSKT members, enrolled members of other federally recognized tribes and non-Indians, and then applicants who are veterans or who have served in the military and have been satisfactorily discharged will have performance over other applicants if equally qualified. So our ordinance doesn't clarify at what stage. It basically is just saying that it's based on the necessary qualifications. I'm not sure if at that point it says, okay, you have the necessary qualifications, but we have these testing requirements such as MVP has. And potentially that's where the difference came with the executive selection, was there were some questions that had to be answered and some scenarios that had to be answered to kind of show your ability in those areas. And so I think without having that clear as far as, does it stop at the application or does it stop at the testing to show that you have the ability to provide those functions that are needed for the position?
So, well, again, you know, we have the policy and Rick isn't here to answer your specific question. So,
Shelley, just a quick comment on that.
Go ahead, Len.
Since I've been on council, it appeared to me that it seemed that the different entities and organizations always had a different interpretation on when the tribal preference was applied. It was either applied during the screening process or applied during the selection process. So that's what I've observed in the past couple of years.
Go ahead, Loretta.
Thank you. Another thing I wanted to suggest, since we do have Lisa in here from personnel and some of the department heads, was to have somebody, like if you call a particular program and that person that you're calling is not there and may not be there for several days due to many different situations, COVID mainly, which a lot of people are experiencing right now, that person from that department is unreachable. And so when you're calling them, you're leaving message after message after message, not knowing what's going on. I really, and I've always believed this, that there needs to be somebody else that can back that person up, that can check those voicemails to make sure that you're on top of all of these different situations, rather than just leaving people hanging. Because I know, you know, even our elders get hung up in that, calling a particular program, and that person's out for one reason or another for days, and then they never hear back from them. So I would just like to suggest that that there's always somebody to back each other up, you know, at least one person, to check those voicemails and emails and whatnot. Thank you.
Thank you, Loretta. We've had extensive discussions about this, and I'm glad that we do have our directors here online, Patty, Lisa, Greg, to be able to hear that comment. And I would say that if we don't, you know, if you don't get an answer, you know which departments they supervise now. And so, you know, that's the next step. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on the, you know, I was able to sit on council for a little while. And when I was there, I was asking from our department heads and whoever they're in charge of, like Loretta was stating about phone calls being made, not being returned. And I know some of council were there when I was saying I would like to see a checkoff list through our departments. Who made the call to them? When did they call back? You need a call log. Every time I call in, they're just saying, oh, okay, yeah, we'll look into it. Well, you got to call back to see if they looked into it, because nobody's sitting there writing anything down, writing any of the information down. I think that needs to be kind of a pen in hand type thing when people call council or our department heads, pen in hand to a checkoff list. Who made the call? What time did they call? What were they what were they calling us about? It's just that simple. And on our tribal preference, I think we're kind of, you know, in a way heading, to me, I guess, in a wrong situation here, where we're supposed to be here to take care of our people. And it doesn't seem like our tribal membership is getting in, I guess, enough. And I could be wrong as far as jobs and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Loretta?
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to take my hand down. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Madam Chair.
You're the only one that uses the hand. Who was that? I didn't see the.
Me?
Leonard, go ahead.
Yes. The reason I keep talking about the tribal preference and stuff is back when the highways first started being built here on the reservation, these companies that come in had to hire tribal members, and I was one of those tribal members hired. And I was put on the survey crew without any experience whatsoever. And fortunately, I was taught by some good surveyors that been in the trade for a number of years. And because of that preference on the reservation of being a tribal member, I got hired. Well, I ended up working 15 plus years as a surveyor, and I built highways myself, where I was the only surveyor on the job. So getting your foot in the door is really essential, and that's why I keep bringing it up. If that preference wasn't in effect when those highways were being built, I would never been hired, and I would never learned a new trade. You know, I was in Fort Peck Reservation for 2 years. I was the only surveyor there. You know, building 7 miles of highway. I was in Wyoming. I was, you know, in Portland. I was all over the place. So getting that foot in the door is really important. And that's why I bring it up, because it really did affect me, because I didn't have experience. And the people that hired me gave me that experience. And I just worked 6 months and then I was on my own. And, you know, if you got tribe members out there that are willing to put in the hard work and learn it, you know, they're not getting that chance like I got. And I worked hard at learning the trade. And I worked for 3 different companies, and as much as they didn't like hiring Indians, I got hired by all 3 of them throughout the 15 plus years I worked, because I did my job that I was hired to do, and I did it well, and I worked hard at learning the trade. So that's why I keep bringing it up is, you know, we got to get these tribal members their foot in the door to see if they can make it. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Okay, I think between Lisa and Patty, we can make this happen.
I got one other suggestion.
Go ahead, Nada.
You say the council took themselves out of that. Well, I don't think you can. Who are those executive people? Who are their boss? To me, I think they need to report back to the council to answer questions like these. Did they follow the ordinance? Did they follow whatever? Then that way, when you have meetings and you get questions, then you have the answer. And that's just a suggestion that I don't think you can take. The council cannot take themselves out of it. You're the boss. Hey.
Thank you, Nada.
Hey, Shelley.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm still trying to find the hand on here. I just wanted to point out also, I was fortunate enough to work on the shadow. And I want to point out something that was really disturbing to me as for the reason I stayed there that long. I was there for 4 years, starting from deckhand. And at the end, toward the end of the 4 years, my captain had asked me if I was putting in for his job. And I told him, no, I wasn't thinking about it. Well, he said, I'm recommending that you put in for my job as captain. I said, okay, that's the only reason I'll do it, because you're recommending that I put in for it. I asked him, now what do I need to do from here? He said, you need 3 recommendations from 3 different captains, and I'll be one of them. That process did happen. The other 2 recommendations that I got was from the people we bought the boat from and another local captain. My mistake wasn't bringing my 3 recommendations straight to the Human Resources office for the resort. I handed them over. And she said, I will take them from here over to the Human Resources office. I'd hate to see that happening to tribal membership that are trying their hardest to move up the ladder. The following year, I went into the Human Resources office, and first thing she said, Juliana, was, we advertised last year for a captain and nobody put in. I told her, wait now. I said, I put in because Captain Herman asked me to put in for his job. She said, well, let me look in your file. The only recommendation that was in my file was that from my boss. The other 2 were gone. And I really hope you guys will take a look at the hiring and things that happen like this. I'm not too happy with that happening. All I was told was if I could go back and get the other 2 recommendations to put them back in my file. So I just hope And I'm saying it for the membership and everybody to know that these type of things do happen out there. And that's to our own membership. Hey. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
Madam Chair, comment?
Go ahead, Ellie.
I would like to add, I think, one of the priorities that we talked about in trying to get tribal members to work is meeting them where they're at. And I think that's going to be helpful when we get that up and running and giving people jobs in what they like to do and what they're comfortable doing, what they're good at, instead of trying to put them into this box where they have to be to work at 8 to 4:30 or, meet these standards that maybe they're not prepared to meet yet. By meeting people where they are, we help build their self-esteem. Maybe they're not prepared to work a full-time job yet, but they want to work a week here or the week there, but we start building their confidence, improving their skill sets, and then we can get them into those positions. But I think it's, we need to start somewhere, and I think those efforts will be helpful in increasing our tribal membership pool for when the more professional, skilled positions become available that require certifications and in education. So I think that's a positive thing to look forward to as well.
Thank you, Ellie. Lawrence?
Yeah, one of the things that I look at is that each one of us, when we're doing interviews, is not consistent with the other. And like when I worked at the University of Minnesota, we used the point system, and everybody had to use the point system because if you were claiming 5-point veterans benefits or 10-point veterans benefits, those things had to be in play. And if you were a veteran and you claimed the 5 points, you automatically had 5 points. Then each of the questions that you asked, which were consistent with each applicant, was either 10 points or so that you'd end up with 100 points. A veteran, if they were claiming veterans preference, would end up with 105. So they always had that 5 points. Or the veteran that was claiming 10-point disability would end up with 110 because of that ranking. And when we do interviews with enrollment, we use the numerical system so that when that person ends up with 70, and then if it's a tribal member, then they end up with 75. If they're a veteran, they end up with 80. So you have a numerical, and each individual will then say, okay, I got this point to the interview, I have this point, and the other person has this point. Then we combine them and get the average of what that point is. But none of us are consistent in the tribe when we do interviews. We either just interview and just say, okay, I like this person, or but we don't have something in place that shows why they were a little bit better than the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Leonard.
on a different subject, if everybody's done with this one, I would like to know, is there any plans on building a new entrance to the bison range up on top of River Valley Hill? And if so, when is the timeline?
I'll tell you what I know. So I sat in on a meeting yesterday with the Indian Country Economic Development staff with the State Department of Commerce. And it was with the tribe's tourism committee members. So that's Janet Camel, Velda Shelby, Daisha Whitworth, Tom McDonald, Marie Trojan, and Brian Miller from SK Gaming. And we did bring that up with the staff from Helena, because they were aware of some tourism grant dollars that the state is getting, and then also that dollars that are available from the Economic Development Administration, EDA, and which, you know, may assist us with funding a new visitor center and a new entrance. So Janet followed up on that last night in an email, and they are taking applications for that particular pot of money until March 15th. And so I think that group was looking at applying for that, you know, just to increase one of the options that they talked about on the email was, you know, while we're in the architectural design phase, if we could at least have an entrance there and get gate receipts, you know, to help us to, you know, bring in more money from that Ravelli entrance versus the off the beaten path Moise entrance. That might be one way to start that process. So, and Tom's not here. Les, do you know anything else about that?
No, I'm really not part of the bison range stuff, but I know that has been part of the discussion, I think from the beginning, that that is an avenue that they would certainly like to consider and pursue, but I don't believe there is any timelines that I know of.
Okay, thank you. Loretta?
Yes, thank you. I'm gonna jump in and change the subject for a minute here, or maybe it will be longer than a minute, but since Jonathan is here, I just wanted to ask what, or is there a plan on trying to combat the drug problem that we have on our reservation? It's a big
Yes.
question. I know it's a really big question, but.
Yes, thank you for asking. So I know a lot of tribal members have heard we're kind of restructuring the department. And the best way I can describe a restructure is that behavioral health and addictions is in the center now. And we're utilizing what's called a co-collaborative model, which ties the clinic services in with behavioral health and addictions. And then all of your services here for the tribes go out from there. So if anything happens anywhere, even dental, that may have significant impact on a patient in terms of mental health or behavioral health, the whole system is notified so that we can take care of that tribal resident. So we're doubling the size of our community health workers and creating a new division there. There are 8 people who will be case managers who will be living in your communities and helping deal with those situations when you have people in your community that may be are very acute or have a very high need for our services, so we'll be there. We've added 2 new vehicles. They're being purchased so that those folks can get to those people in need whenever they're having a mental health issue or an addiction crisis. So we're done a tremendous amount of planning and hiring to try to accommodate and really focus on the eradication. We're putting all of our heart and soul into it. And that's not me as much as it is Dr. Fox, your own tribal psychologist, sorry, I always call her psychiatrist, but psychologist who came home. She really is an amazing person, and she wrote her dissertation based on how this should be done in a tribal environment rather than the traditional Western medicine that doesn't really solve problems. At least, that's our opinion. It treats symptoms, but it doesn't solve anything. So by having her here and helping develop these programs, I think it's a wonderful opportunity to do it in a new way. And we're trying to support the other community organizations. You have some amazing community organizations in Ronan and places like that. And our goal is to support programs that are already working and not recreate that wheel and support those tribal members who are so successful at it. So that's kind of a brief summary of what I've done since I've been here.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I have a follow-up.
Go ahead.
So with those, did you say that you are going to be, I guess my question is, will you be filling those positions with tribal members? And then a follow-up to that one would be, are you also going to be addressing historical trauma?
I will not, Dr. Fox will, but yes, she has developed a program for that. She is working on that. Obviously I'm not the right person to address that or even comment on that, but I do appreciate the question. But Dr. Fox is, and yes, always tribal folks is the goal. But I will tell you, we had last count about a few months ago, 36 open positions. So it is challenging sometimes. Sometimes we'll leave those positions open, and I know that may be ironic, me saying that as an outsider, and I do apologize. But, we're trying our best. I think in those positions in the community, I think it's just understood that has to be tribal in terms of meeting the needs of the community, if that's fair.
Thank you.
What's your cultural approach with this new vision of yours?
So once again, the cultural approach and design is from Dr. Fox, and Dr. Fox has relationships and is reaching out to those in the community for advice, because I've been taught as an outsider with the groups that we work with, like Ronan, is that they are, it is tribal, but there's uniqueness to each tribe, and that we need to be careful in each community on how to approach that. So the other position that came home was Dr. Pierre. So Dr. Pierre and Dr. Fox are going to meet with the communities. What they are going to attempt is a grassroots approach. They want to meet within those communities and answer your questions and try to make sure that they're going in the right direction, because we all feel like that there's no way we could do that appropriately unless we get the input from the local communities.
Thanks for that question, Loretta. Is there anything else on that subject?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Bing.
Thank you. Jonathan, Loretta brings up a good point, about hiring people from their communities. Melinda works up there in Elmo, and they all know her. And when I worked with Tribal Health, I worked with Melinda and she was up there working with the people up there, and they accepted her real well because they know her, you know, and some of the behavioral health people that we had down in St. Ignatius, a lot of the people in our community don't know them. And I'm sure that there's other communities that don't know the people either. You know, and it would be I think it would really be a plus to the tribal health department or to the behavioral health department to hire this type of people that belong in these communities, because they know them and they're not scared to talk to them, you know, and they trust them, you know. So it's, you know, and I commend Melinda all the time when she does something like this, you know, and it's hard on her. I know it is hard on her, but because she knows the people, you know, but I got to commend her a lot because she, when I worked with tribal health in 4 years, I seen her do a lot with the people up there from Elmo and Big Arm or not, but for their losses, you know, and I think, you know, if there's any way that we can do that with these other communities, I think would be a blessing for everybody.
Thank you. Madam Chair, could I make one more comment?
Go ahead, Jonathan.
So one of the things I think that a lot of you may not know is you have a tremendous amount of talent coming out of your local schools and your university here, your college. And I think the biggest frustration within tribal health is we're losing them. Licensed addiction counselors, we can't even recruit from the college because people are paying $10 more an hour. And that's recent, that's not long-term. This is something we not approach council on or anything yet, but, and I can go into reasons why during the pandemic that has exploded, those salaries. But, you know, we really need to talk about within our department how to better meet those needs, because we're losing so much talent here from the tribes and they're going to other places to work outside the tribal environment.
So, Jonathan, when you're speaking of these care managers, are those the same ones that Jamie Lozo was talking about last week at council to help deal with, like, for instance, COVID patients? Because we had asked for a list of who those people are so that we can refer our constituents to them, and we don't have that list yet.
All right, I will definitely get with her, but those positions haven't been hired yet. The 8 we added, they were recently put on the org chart. It's been advertised. The other positions that are currently there, I'll make sure she gets those to you as soon as possible.
Okay. Because I have people in the community that, you know, have had, I guess, long-term effects from COVID, and you know, people are still recovering at home, you know, once they get out of the hospital, and they're just not being checked on.
Yes, and so we are working on that from beginning to end. Jamie and some other folks are going back and redeveloping all the relationships with the hospitals, with the discharge planners, to make sure that from the beginning we're more involved and that we know upon discharge when that happens. And then also to respond to the last part of your question, the long haulers is what it's referred to with what I'm researching right now. The long haulers, they're treating those symptomatically. There isn't a typical program, but we really are working on developing a long haulers type of approach for treatment for those COVID patients beyond those that are just recently recovering. So we hope to bring something to you soon on that.
Okay, thank you. Any other tribal health issues? Go ahead, Francis.
Oh, I was just going to ask if we were done with this topic here we're discussing. I have a couple of items I'd like to discuss.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. Good to see the leadership in play. Each and every one of you. The elders, thank you. I wanted to say thanks to the chair, the chairwoman. You know, you have that little article you do in the Charcusta message from the chair. You did a little interaction here with what the president is setting back up in regards to tribal in the national level communications. And I'm glad that you're seated there to proceed with that. And along with that, I noticed in the Charcusa, this last issue, there's a lot of mentioning of different types of agencies, federal agencies that's going to be doing various things with a very large amount of dollars. And they're going to be taking in the tribal component added to that. And it caught my interest because I was wondering, and I know it's not an answerable question, but you know, the components of how the tribes are going to partake, how who's going to be in those kind of positions and so forth. That's going to keep like our tribe aware of what's happening on a case by case or a basis of what's going on in that federal level discussion. And I know it's a pretty hard job. It's a kind of heavy job, but I think it's needed. But apart from that, along with that, there was an issue that come up, and that was in regards to the park systems, the state park systems. The Big Arm State Park was mentioned. And the state park was the state, and I'm under land yet. That's my assumption. So you can let me know if it's possible or if it's way off the topic. That's something that I was kind of interested in discussing here. That's one of the issues. I have about 2-3 items, I believe. But if one way or the other, if it goes archery direction, I would like the tribes to be seated into that part of discussions. You know, our ancestors were archers, and we have there's some youth that build archery. They build arrows and so forth. So I think that would be a good, strong tie into that as far as cultural, some cultural education into that. I hear the past Kootenays talk about the bighorn ram bow that they used to make in the past, and that was used to hunt buffalo. When they went and hunted buffalo, they hunted buffalo in the mountains here, and et cetera, et cetera. So that's a component that's, excuse me, that kind of caught my interest in this federal government and tribal level discussion. I hope we're seated strong there, and I give you the best wishes of the chairwoman that's positioned in that right now. So apart from that and the Big Arm new archery, I've been making a plan of a sort. In the past, this term, our elders used to use this term, Klunisnam. Klunisnam is your village goes from place to place. One of the things that my mother used to share with me, and that's where I was reminded of this. I was listening to one of her tapes, and she she'd say, "Ni pikak at manus klunis ni ak smaknik." So I got to thinking about that klunisnam, and one of the things is where the village is, wherever the village is, and come spring, summer, fall, the village would disperse. Few families would go this way, few other families go this way, but they'd go to places that where they were going to collect sustenance, food, to the whatever it may be, the types of food that they'd collect. And so when that was coming, the chief would say, "Well, I'm going to be traveling too, and then when first snow comes, I'm going to be at such and such place." So the rest of the village, the lodges would say, "Okay, we know where you're going to be at now." So then as that process took place, and the first snow started to come, these people would start coming back to this place where this chief mentioned that there'll be, and that's where they would winter and do their ceremonial dances there. And then that process would repeat itself again, generations after generations after generations. That was Klunisnam, covered a lot of things. So I thought, well, since I'm retired, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put together a little plan to perpetuate the living culture. I looked and I said, well, the council, geez, I put together resolution 21085, and it's got a lot of strong traditional cultural value and language that they're going to integrate into the daily lives of the tribal membership. So in this contribution, or this attempt at something to perpetuate a living culture, what my plan is, I made a list of places that I feel that are significant in the Kootenai level. So I got up to about 19 places, but I know there's more. And what we're going to do is 2022 is when our plan starts, and we're looking at maybe May, June, July, August, meeting September. We're going to clone that place, and hopefully tag along and come along on that. Anyway, our priority on the list is that we want to go first, the very first visit to Wilsall, Montana. The reason for that is a few years ago, if you guys recall, there was a reburial of an infant on the Anzac property there. And that was a little process that happened, you know, through the different meetings we had, and the lady named Sarah Anzac, you know, she made the commitment to agree with the tribe that for the reinterment of this 12,000 plus year old infant. And so there was a little ceremonial gathering of many different tribes at her property. And it's been a few years and we haven't been back through there. So that's going to be one of our priority visits come 2022. I called her up and I told her what we're planning, and she was very excited to invite us to her property there, and we would be welcome and so forth, as long as we abide. If she has any rules, we'll abide by what rules she has. So stepping from there, we're kind of also putting this time frame on like weekends, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, because for those tribal members that are working, and if they have an interest in going or participating or supporting, or however, they'll have that time. Those dates will be, they don't have to go, oh, I gotta make it back to work, all that kind of stuff. we're putting that time frame into that. So after Anzac visit, we're hoping we'll shoot over to Medicine Wheel. That's at the border of Wyoming and Montana. Those are distant from here. So then what we're going to look at is how we're looking at it is whoever, how many go, will they take their own vehicle? We're going to try to call a place maybe in Bozeman to accommodate for people to have a place to go rest and so forth. And then from there, the next day, go to Wilsall, do what we're going to do at the site. And then from there, maybe shoot off to Laurel, Montana, and camp there, and then go from there to the Medicine Wheel and take care of the business there, and maybe shoot back up to Bozeman and come back into the reservation. That's kind of the tentative and general plan of action there that we're looking at. There's going to be another probably west of us to go visit different sites over there. There's going to be local gatherings on the reservation to discuss what we call, what the term is in English, they call it sacred sites, And so we're going to be doing that and hoping that we can, drum up enough interest, because this kind of information needs to be shared with the younger Aksmaknik, the Ksanka Aksmaknik, because their life revolved around what they called Nupika. Nupika was a supporter of what they do, and we're running low and lower into interest of those type of things. We even had to cancel one of the biggest ceremonial events with the Ksanka, and that was jump dance last year. It became a pretty disarrayed situation. And so we're hoping that as we combat the situation of COVID, the situation of drugs and alcohol, and we combat those kind of things, what little information that we can share in this process of Klunisnam would stick to these younger people's heart, and even to the adults, because the adults need it too. There's a lot of adults that acting like children all the time. So then we need to really perpetuate that value. You have that value, and what we want to do is perpetuate. We've done a lot of preservation. There's a lot of preservation of things. So that's what we're going to kind of do at that point. That's part of one of the plans. And I also wanted to mention you guys know how is our one local in Elmo there to target shoot, a nice little area where a person can go get their rifle sighted in and so forth. And I would like to see the tribal government supported in some way financially, and developing that area and improving it. And so they could also even do maybe safety, gun safety, or whatever else kind of things that's associated with a target range. So I want to put that out there for the representatives here in the council.
Francis,
And
what area were you talking about? Because you kind of went into slow motion there for a bit. Just when you say something good, then it goes into this weird mode. But what area were you talking about?
in Elmo,
Yeah.
in Elmo, it's just west of Elmo. It's called the Gully.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, people kind of been using that place as a central throw my trash away area. It's been cleaned up, but then somebody brings it back over there. When we have a dump in Proctor, they could haul their garbage to. So I would like that support for Howard Walker as he developed his a little range there. And I didn't know about it. I was going up into white man's land and shooting my rifle around, getting in trouble. Anyway, that's the one point I wanted to point out on that for Mr. Walker and our plan to do some Kshumisinam and the thankfulness of the federal agencies wanting to bring the tribes back to the table and discuss different things and perpetuate this resolution that you guys have written. I want to see it come to life. I want to see it developed into something. I know the cultural committee is one area, but they're committed right now to the language. They want to really push the language for these young people and what they're doing there. So, and maybe support them too, and then hire another couple, maybe another couple of linguists that could work under Dorothy, just like what you guys were talking about here about, we're supposed to shadow this person, shadow that person. Maybe you guys can ask Dorothy that she can get some help for that. She's got a good wealth of knowledge. She understands the language technical components, and she can actually converse in Kootenai now. So then I would ask that maybe you guys consider that and talk to the director up there and see what kind of a deal you guys can bring out of there. Anyway, lastly, I wanted to mention is that with all these kind of things going on, I don't know how this email and this information come across, and I don't know if Len's still on, Len Two-Teeth, but there's an email going around that there was some artifacts discovered at a development area up by Ashley Lake. I would like that addressed somewhere down the line, but that's beside the point. I believe, we have the preservation office, we have our Kootenai representative, and we have our cultural committee that's tied into those things there. And I hope they get a handle on doing something with that. I think that kind of covers what I wanted to present to you, the council members. And I wanted to ask if you had any questions. If not, then I'll shut up and close off here.
Well, thank you for all those reports, Francis, and I really look forward to your plan about visiting those places that, I know that you guys have done that in the past, taking your youth to the different Aboriginal places. And I think that's really important for our youth to know those places and the importance of, what happened there in the past and just carrying that forward. So I'm really excited about that. And, that's what that resolution was designed to, I guess, bring forward, is that kind of, those kind of ideas, because we know that one department or one agency can't do it all. So, with everything that the Biden-Harris administration is doing as far as, finally listening to Indian country, I've really been thinking about this. NCAI has done their work lobbying. We have over 50 Indigenous people in different appointments within this administration. It's never happened before. And, just to keep up on those consultations is a huge job. We were excited when all that happened, and it seemed like this whole past year has been just consultation after consultation. And, it's kind of hit and miss as far as answering or prioritizing which ones we listen to and, submit written comments to. But, that's one thing I wanted to visit with council and Rick and our chief of staff about is, designating someone or maybe our directors within these that oversee these departments to take that on, because there's no way I can keep up with it as, you know, a one person. There just isn't. And the people that have that information, that that technical information that is needed to respond to those requests, you know, they have a full-time job. So, you know, it takes from them, you know, their input is important, but yeah, we just need someone to kind of spearhead that so we don't miss that information. But these are all great suggestions. You did cut out a little bit on the part where you're talking about Big Arm State Park. So I'll definitely connect with you to, I guess, talk more about that. Len, did you want to respond to the
Yes.
email that he referenced?
Yes, I do. I just wanted to inform council that last night I did send off an email to the preservation department head and some preservation staff along with the cultural director. I received a phone call last night from an individual who informed me that he is an acquaintance to some contractors that were building homes up there in the Ashley Lakes area, just west of Kalispell, going toward Libby. And they dug up some artifacts. And so they notified them. He called me, and then so I sent the message off to the appropriate staff. So that's what Francis was referring to. I have not yet received any feedback yet from the staff on what was found yet. So when I do, I will I will get that information out.
Thank you, Lynn. Any other comments from council? Questions from staff?
Hello. Shelley, this is Junior.
Go ahead, Junior.
I would like a update on the NAGPRA position that was put out. That'll probably be from Vernon if he's still on. Where is it going to be held? The duties. Where did the job description come from? You know, who did it? If he's still on. Hey.
Go ahead, Vernon.
Okay, yeah, this is something that could be handled in our meeting, but that's okay. Good question. Yeah, I put out the position, let's see, a couple of weeks ago, but our personnel representative was out with COVID, and so it ended up not getting listed until just this past week. But the position is, you know, the NAGPRA part of it isn't really a full-time position that that requires someone full-time all the time. And so I combined that, and let's see, if you recall, Shelley, I got during the summer, I got the org chart approved. And what I did was combine that position with the historical records position. And what that position really does is, you know, we have a lot of resources, a lot of CDs, a lot of DVDs, a lot of VHS tapes that are from interviews of the past. We have a lot of information here, but we really don't have a good, efficient way of searching it and accessing it. So if we have questions about, you know, whether it's whose family members, or if we have questions about any of it, we really don't have one place to really search to get that information. So this position, the responsibility, the primary responsibility will be someone that knows databases, knows how to create databases, knows how to catalog within databases so that they could go through, and it's going to be it's going to be a time consuming position for someone to go through and to actually catalog all of the information that we have on from all of these different sources, putting it into a database. So when somebody in the community or otherwise comes and is looking for a certain type of information, we can just search the database and we know exactly which tape or which resource to search at on minute 13, whatever, of this interview, this elder discusses that, that type of thing. And so that's kind of what that position, the primary responsibility of that position will be is the historical records and knowledge of database creation and all of that. And then the other part of it is the NAGPRA position, which is, kind of right now, it kind of, those responsibilities go back and forth with preservation, and they, on certain aspects of it, such as repatriation of human remains, I believe Mike contracts with Rosemary, the previous NAGPRA person, on taking care of those situations. And then the other stuff is basically dealing with the Army Corps and the meetings and putting together, plans for implementing NAGPRA, which was, 25-year-old process that's still ongoing, but that'll be the other part of it, is the NAGPRA. So but the primary part will be to really make our information accessible and usable.
Thank you, Vernon. Did that answer your question, Junior?
Yeah, it's good.
Leonard?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Moving on. Could we get an update on the Flathead Indian Irrigation Project? I know the tribe should have got their second installment of 90 million for renovations of the project. A while back, when Ryan Rushi was handling most of that, I don't know if he still is, I requested the tribes and Ryan about trying to get a idea or a list of workforce tribal members to be able to do a lot of that work. If the council has even delved into that, about starting another corporation so we can do the job ourselves, find out what kind of workforce we have out there that has these technical positions that we can use as far as building the project or revamping the project. I haven't heard anything on that lately. Has there been any talk about Riot or council about going forward and getting any of that done?
As far as what we're doing with the project, we have Jay Smith with I guess, safety of dams program, or the division of, actually it's Division of Engineering and Water Resources. He's been working on, the projects there. I've heard from Flooded Irrigation. I sat in on a meeting with them, and they just talked about what they're doing, what they did last year. And, they're about half staffed. So we've talked about different options as far as, getting their workforce up and going as well. So I don't believe we've gotten a report from Ryan as far as the workforce component of it, unless that was a meeting I missed. Anita, is there anything else?
Geez, other than the projects that we were gonna go on the field trip and look at, that they're getting ready to work on in some of the canals. And
Okay.
then the project itself talked about the other night. What night was that, Shelley? Thursday night?
Mhm.
I think it went till 9. They were talking about using Wind Act money to purchase equipment and stuff like that, that they needed to start the program year off and have the right equipment, because a lot of it was aged. And they just talked about the projects that needed to be fixed and some that they had.
So one thing I talked about, or I asked about at that meeting, was could they hire like tribal member, like dump trucks or whatever? Because I know some people that, have those pieces of equipment. And they said with the government, they have these, I think it was $2,000 limit or $2,500 limit. And if you had the truck and the operator, so, that's, I don't know, doesn't take long to use up that much money. So, they have some internal, I guess, barriers in their whole contracting world. But Dan, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, so as far as projects go, Leonard, some of the tribal staff within the past calendar year, we brought in, I believe Ryan and Seth Makepeace and others with the Natural Resources Department, brought in a list of proposed first-year projects. It's my recollection that council did sign off on those projects. And so the Natural Resources staff is working on setting up like requests for qualifications for those particular projects and trying to get those out. The problem with construction on the irrigation project is that you can't do construction during the irrigation season, which runs from, I believe, end of April to September. So all construction has to take place outside of that window. Of course, that's when we get the worst weather, is from October to early April for construction on the project. So it's going to be limited, or definitely harder to get those projects done. But yeah, there is a list of projects out there that Natural Resources is working on getting out. As far as positions, Madam Chair was right. There is it's the Division of Engineering and Water Resources under the Natural Resources Department, and they just had, and maybe they still do, had I believe it was 20 to 25 openings on various different positions and various different backgrounds. So some of those may have not been filled yet, but I do know they are working on filling many of those positions. As far as what's available for tribal members, I'd recommend contacting Melinda Charlo with Tribal Preference. I do know not only on like water projects, but other projects that folks are working on here for the tribes. A lot of those folks have reached out to Melinda's office seeking tribal members with various backgrounds, whether construction or other types of backgrounds as far as administrative or other duties, I would encourage you to reach out to Melinda. As far as the money goes, I believe Greg is still on and he may have more information on it than I do. So I'll turn it over to Greg.
Thank you very much, Dan. Sir, Leonard, you are correct that we are in the second year of the mandatory funding, and our expectation is to receive the second or this current year's $90 million distribution imminently. We have conveyed council's wish to have this $90 million distribution divided 50-50, just like the first one was. I have an open conversation with the Department of the Division of Bureau of Trust Fund Administrators, and that second mandatory payment has not arrived yet, but I speak with her every Tuesday morning. I think that some of the distribution delays are built into the continuing resolution with Congress, but we expect that to come imminently, and we have an open line of communication with the funding source, and I stay in touch with them weekly.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, the reason I bring it up is I just hate to have the tribes miss out on so much of this money that's coming in on the water compact to get the tribal membership in a better situation of earning wages and better themselves. I think a lot of our ills out there would be eradicated if we can get the memberships, needs met. And one of those is jobs and good paying jobs. And that's why I really feel the tribes, the tribal council, tribal organization needs to spearhead it to get our tribal members that are living here jobs, and the ones that want to come home jobs. And I really think it should be done through our tribal government on capturing some of this money that's going to be spent on the project. It can go a long ways on helping a lot of people, and I just hate to see it not happen. That's why I keep bringing it up. That's just so much money that we've got to be capitalizing on that money for our own pockets. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Leonard. Thanks for that question. And, we had all those resolutions that we passed, and, Rick and Ryan were putting together teams or task forces to work on these. And we haven't had a report from them for a while. And so I'd asked for that to happen during the January quarterly. So, but that was one of them, that Ellie had mentioned before was, to provide jobs for every tribal member that wants them. So, and to meet them where they are. And another one we were looking at was, another program we were looking at was to provide kind of like a day labor situation. People just wanted to work, if they needed money for Christmas or school clothes or whatever, because not everybody wants that 9-to-5 job. So, but yeah, we will touch base with Rick and get a report out for sure during the January quarterly, but if we can before then, and we can get that out in the Sharkusta. I'm gonna have Jen follow up on that. Can you make a note of that, Jen?
Yes, I will.
Thank you. Is there anything else?
I had a question, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, James.
I was wondering, I know with COVID going on, it's restricted a lot of things, but back when I was chair a number of years ago, I had understood that the bands hadn't met for many years, and Pat Left Hand was at that time the last one and was able to get the bands together. I'm wondering if the different bands are still meeting or not. I think at the time, Sophie Pierre and I can't remember who was at Bonner's at the time. We would meet from time to time and we were kind of got a rotation going. We'd go up to Cranbrook and they'd come here and we went to Bonner's and such. And I was just curious if anyone can enlighten me as to if the bands are still meeting, if they're still getting together or those leaders talking. And then the other question I had was from our elders committee here, how many of you all are being impacted by, I think Canada is charging what, 175 or something for that one special COVID test to even go to Canada. One person said it was either from 170 to $200 to be able to take the COVID test and go up into Canada for, even meeting with the bands or any of the events that we have up there. And I was just curious, how many of you all been running into that? And maybe that should be something we should be able to help cover that if there's some of our folks that need to go up to, Cranbrook or Creston and, St. Eugene and those places for cultural reasons or folks passing or those kind of things.
So I can tell you from a government perspective that I was recently given the numbers of Jennifer Porter. I think she is the new chair of the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho, and Catherine Tenise with the Tunaha Nation to see if they wanted to have a Tunaha protocol meeting. We've been dealing with a lot of, water, border, transboundary issues. And so between Stu Levitt and Billy Barkwin, they're always on those calls. And, they said, they gave me those numbers to see if they wanted to get together. But from the culture committee or elders perspective, I'm not sure what's going on there. If somebody wants to address that.
Yeah, there hasn't been formal meetings. There was one in, but the coordination of it kind of fell apart. So, but as far as with the Canadian bands and over here, we talk with the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho and coordinate with them the field trip and the everything up there to the Kootenai National Forest on that issue. But as far as I forget what they called them, the gatherings where there was all the bands were together. That hasn't happened for a while. There was a Zoom one too, I think, that happened, but yeah, the coordination of it is kind of an issue.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
Yeah, as you remember, we did have a virtual meeting on the border crossing with the Mohawks and a number of tribes in regards to border crossing and the legislation that we're trying to have passed by the US Congress and also the Canadian province. The Tunaha Nation meet on a regular basis. We just haven't been participating while they have the Tunaha Nation meetings. We haven't participated in the Tunaha Nation meetings for quite some time. Before, when I and Pat or Mike and Ruben, when we were on the council, we all took that responsibility and made sure that we participated with the Tunaha Nation so that all the nations gave their reports. But we haven't been doing that lately.
Okay, well, we can definitely get that going again. Thanks for that question, James. And what was the second part of your question? Oh, it was about the COVID test.
Yeah, my understanding is for anyone from the US to go to Canada. So for Kootenai community members want to go up to Canada, I'm understanding Canadians are wanting, you have to take this certain particular COVID test, which can cost $170 and up. So I was wondering if any of our Kootenai Culture Committee or Kootenai folks have run into that cost, and if they're being able to cover it or not. How's that being handled? If they have a chance to go to Canada, are they spending that money to go up there or to take that test or what?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I had a couple of big job to do up there like about a month or so ago, and I did get the shot here, but when I got up there, they were asking for the test, the swab that when the COVID first hit, that the people were taking, throughout our communities. That's what they were wanting, was the test.
Oh, Mike, you muted yourself.
That's the last about a month ago that I got trying to go across.
So James, I'm not sure if it's a special test, but I know when we went to the American Indian Hall grand opening in Bozeman at MSU about a month ago, there were several members of the Blackfoot Confederacy, and they just went to MSU clinic to just take a regular quick test or whatever they call them, like a home test. So.
Yeah, what I understand, Madam Chair, is that you have to prove that you have had your shots, that there wasn't any, if you didn't have the shots, then you were required as you go through. That's my understanding, but Mike was requested the paperwork that went along with the shot, I guess, right, Mike?
I did have the paperwork that I took the same day of trying to go across, and they still wouldn't let me across. What they wanted was the first swab when the epidemic first hit, when we went through all the communities and they had you drive through and they took a swab whether or not you were testing you for it. That's what they were wanting. Because when I was going across, I had all my paperwork with me the day of that I got the shot, and they still wouldn't let me across.
But they let Sandra across.
Yeah, because hers was like 2 weeks before mine.
Yeah, I think they say it takes 2 weeks to take effect or whatever.
If I may, I think, I just think it's important that we kind of get back on organizing and getting the bands together. And I know back when I was chair, I kind of pushed it to do it all the time, and I kind of had staff help me do it. And so I think it's important. I think we need to have the bands meet, and I think getting all the band leaders and even at that time doing the language summits that started back in kind of Lawrence and them's days, and I think those are important things to do. And I think we just gotta kind of make sure to do it.
Also, Lawrence, do you recall when we had the meeting in Naples, Idaho? At the DC level, they were offering, I said they were going to have an opening. I don't know where that went since we haven't met. I haven't been involved with it anymore, but to see where that went at the DC level with that position, if they ever did anything with it, or are they going to do anything, or was it dropped through the cracks of not communicating?
Yeah, I don't know if they ever did fill that position. I remember you and Francis were up there at that meeting, and that's when they extended it from 30 to 100 miles. Our concern was that 100 miles takes in Elmo. And so, and they were going to be having drones and ATVs and all of that. And for ceremonial practice that we go through, are they going to be infringing on us? And that's when they said that they would have a liaison. But other than that, I don't know if it's been filled or not.
So I will definitely follow up with the Kootenai Tribe of Idaho and Catherine Tenise to get that meeting set up.
Yeah, I guess, Madam Chair and the rest of council, I guess if I could just make my offering to the council of trying to stay involved with it, I'd be more than willing to. I frequently use the both borders in Idaho and here in Montana, so just keep that in mind.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, is there anything else?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, speaking of liaisons, what's going on with getting someone back up in Libby office, working with the Kootenai National Forest? Has anything been done, brought forward, or suggestions? I think we really need that position filled again. Has there been any talk with council or any dialogue with the Kootenai National Forest up in Libby?
Vernon, do you want to address that?
Okay, yeah. The last that I had heard was Chad Benson, who is the superintendent up there in the Kootenai National Forest, had offered to have discussions with it, but I guess that's where it was kind of left. There was the that isn't. I mean, that's above my pay grade. That's a kind of a government thing, and so I assumed that there would be some contact. I could let's see if or perhaps Jennifer or somebody could contact Chad and renew those discussions. That would be good. And if you would prefer that I negotiate that, I would be happy to do that.
Can you give Jen the contact information for him?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, there was talk from the council or the organization, I don't know, a month or two ago, about licensing tribal members. The tribes were thinking about doing it themselves. Has anything transpired from that?
So we had a meeting set up with someone from the state, Rick and Ryan, and I can't remember the lady's name from Helena, or from, yeah, she was from Helena. And She ended up having to cancel, and I'm not sure if that got rescheduled. So I was just thinking about that last night. That's funny that you bring that up today. But again, Rick is sick today, so I'll definitely follow up with him on that. Let you know.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Also, how are you guys doing on getting the 10 new game wardens or police officers or whatever that was talked about a while back?
So the next step is for us to consider it at the budget committee level. And there's been, I guess, talk back and forth about, do we need 10? Do we want 10? Some people do, some people don't. It's an issue of, getting them all trained up at the state accreditation level or whatever. And that's necessary so that they can have that cross jurisdiction ability. So that's where it is right now. Any other council want to share their thoughts on that? Or their opinions? You guys with me?
Madam Chair, I'd just like to say I hope that we can get that moving, especially in conjunction with the closures of areas and increase in recreation permits prices. Thanks.
Thank you, Sharmel.
Eric,
Go ahead, Levi.
I'd like to see our game wardens go back to the federal level, federal officers as they were when I was on. They just had more power than they do now, and it's like Tom McDonald said, they didn't a while, but they did end up paying their fines and stuff, they had and that's what I'd like to see, because a lot of our cases, non-members, what I've been back of, they get thrown out of court, and that, it's follow the federal guidelines, and just we might have to do that. Thank you.
You cut out a little bit there, Levi, but I have a question. So when they were doing that, did they get their training down in Albuquerque or somewhere in the Southwest?
City, Utah, that's where I went.
Oh, okay.
Used to be in Marana, Arizona too.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Nada.
For those council people that want less than eight more hired, I'd like to hear their reasoning behind that.
You're muted, Carol.
Yeah, I mentioned the funding of a million something for 10 new game wardens. There's talk of trying to get them trained up. It's a couple years out. We know that. And so my suggestion was as to at least get people to be able to sit at gates or at locations that will prevent a lot of individuals from using certain areas. And so I know it'll take a lot to bring that many on, but I don't think there's anything wrong with looking at options. I mean, a million something is going to take positions away from other services to tribal members. So I think we need to be prudent on how we proceed. And if we can do it a different way, why not? I know game wardens, we have a lot of them retiring right now, and I'm really saddened to see that because I used to be in the department, and so it would be nice to know, just to hear from them, see what their thoughts are, and then also from the current game wardens on what they're thinking. But I don't really like the attitude that you can't do it with somebody at the gate, because we did it last year during COVID and it seemed to work fairly well. I know there's talk that they didn't have the training or didn't have the ability, but if you have game wardens that do have the training, they still have the ability to get to a location if somebody does need some help. And when you hire a tribal member to sit at a gate and it's their land, I think they're going to do everything in their power to make sure that things are secure and taken care of. So it's an option, and I don't think there's any problem with looking at those options. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Carol. Anyone else?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Loretta.
So I wanted to know about the old Costata Hall and the replacement about that, or the replacement of that. Because I know that my dad was actually the one that was kind of harping on this for years and years and years. And to my knowledge, I believe there was a report put out on the building itself and the what condition it's in and everything like that. But after that, I don't know whatever became of the plans to rebuild the old Costata, or if that's even still in the plans, or has that even been discussed, or do you know where that's at right now?
Yes, this hasn't come up for a long time. It seemed like, and I could be wrong, it seemed like, was there asbestos in there? Carol, do you remember?
Yeah, that's what it was.
Was it? Okay. Yeah,
Also,
we just haven't revisited that. Go ahead, Carol.
Yeah, Madam Chair, yeah, I recall that there was some issues with the flooring and the roof. And then that's when I and some of the other council put it as a priority to have a new community center built for Elmo specifically. So they would have a place for kids to play basketball and, have meetings and that kind of thing. So, I think we are looking at those options, and now we're going to start moving on them now that the resolutions are approved. So I think it's just part of the planning, which, it's hard to find contractors and things like that. But yeah, that's what I want to see done for that community, specifically so they have a place for the kids to be able to do things. And there's so many meetings and other things going on that they don't have the location. So I would at least like to see that done as one of our top priorities.
Okay, thank you. Jen, can you make a note to visit with Lisa about this? To find that report on that particular building?
Madam Chair.
Bing?
Yes, talking about the hall there. Last time I was in there with Kevin Howlett and we looked at that building and talked about the asbestos and whatnot in there. But he was considering about rebuilding that, through tribal health. But ever since Kevin has kind of retired, nothing's been done on it since then. So, but I think maybe tribal health might have a little role in that building. So maybe Guy could ask them.
Also, I remember from that report that came out, there was an issue with the water table. There's water that runs down, or almost like an underground stream that runs down through there and crosses the road right west of there and comes right, and the hall kind of sits right on it. So I think the conclusion on all of it from that report was that, you'd be spending an awful lot of money to rebuild something that would have the same kinds of foundation and other issues. So what the actual recommendation, I believe, that came out of that was if you're to build a new one, to put it someplace else where it isn't sitting right on that underground stream.
Okay, thank you, Vernon. You have a better memory than I do. Charmel said she has the report and she can resend it to council. So yeah, we can revisit that.
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I read the report. Vernon gave it to me a while back, and it would cost way too much money even to try to rehab it. And like you said, with the water table there, asbestos there, it's just better to tear it down and remove it and find a better place. I think the cost was like 275,000 just to renovate it, but there's nothing there to renovate. I mean, where it sits on its foundation and stuff, and that's been, in a bad shape for years, and it's not getting any better. So I sure wouldn't recommend putting it in the same place. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, I remember that little tiny kitchen.
Madam Chair,
Go ahead, Mike.
along the same lines with the water issue there underneath the hall, but that pretty much almost that property on that side of the highway, even where the housing area is down there, is the same way. That's why them houses down there get the kind of a mold inside their house, because it's the same way. Got that underground water. So just keeping in mind when time comes to rebuild or relocate. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
Madam-
Betty, did you have something, Betty? No? Are you gonna pass? Okay, go ahead, Leonard.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up another subject. I watched one of you guys' Zoom meetings a while back, and I see Len Two Teeth brought up a land exchange with Dayton school system. I totally disagree with exchanging any of that land that the tribe owns there where Dayton School sits. I don't think we should be exchanging any of those lands. We got to keep what we have there. And I think on all of our leases to the non-member public, we have to reevaluate our fees we set for a lot of these people. I mean, we charge our membership more for a home site than what a lot of these businesses and places that we negotiate with the non-members is $1. And membership pays more than that for home site lease. I think it needs to be reevaluated and take a good look at, because, you know, we talk about money's being tight, but yet we lease these pieces for next to nothing, and it's hurting us as a whole, and it needs to be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Yeah, we did end up leasing, doing a long-term lease, not a land exchange. So it looks like Charmel left us, and is Len still here?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay, Carol?
I was waving goodbye. No, I'm not going.
Okay, is there anything else?
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Loretta.
I just wanted to mention that the only reason that I brought up the old Costata Hall wasn't to rebuild it. I simply brought it up because it shouldn't be, just because it needs to be removed, it should not be taken off the table. It still needs to, because our kids still need somewhere to go, because they have nowhere to go. We have a playground, and we have a baseball field and a powwow grounds. And that's it. You know, so I just, and that's the only reason why I brought it up, because it's, we need something out there for them. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Loretta. So Tuesday, we're going to be discussing our ARPA priorities in council. So hopefully everyone can tune into that discussion as well. Leonard, did you have something?
Yeah, one more thing I wanted to bring up was the north end of Pablo there, where housing and SK Electronics sits. You know, I see there was some talk about realignment there going through Ronan, but I think the tribe needs to bring up the fact that there's no turn base to those two businesses, and, you know, it could get pretty hairy in the winter months when someone's making a left-hand turn into, because there's only one place to turn in there to go to those two tribal businesses, and they probably combined have 100 employees. Why that wasn't designed like the rest of Pablo, I think the council and our department should harp on that and get those turn bays put in properly, so it would be a lot safer for our employees when they're going to work, going and coming. Thank you.
Thank you, Leonard. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Madam Chair,
Go ahead.
happy Thanksgiving. It's Carol. Happy Thanksgiving to everybody, and be safe.
I'll save the rest of mine for the next meeting. I'm just checking off my list, so I'll stop. Thanks, Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Leonard. Well, thank you, everyone. We have a to-do list about page long. So thanks for all the questions and concerns and input. And I'm really excited now that we have all of our directors on staff that we can actually see some progress, some movement forward. So thank you, everyone. Okay, if council can stay on, I think.
Thanks, everybody. Happy Thanksgiving.
Hey, happy Turkey Day.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you to council for doing this. It's really good that you guys take the time to listen to all the folks here. I mean, I kind of hesitate to call them elders because half of them are younger than me, but but you get a lot of good input here and a lot of questions, and they aren't afraid to ask the tough questions. And we've been working on that internally as well, is being able to ask the questions and have these discussions and disagree in respectful ways. And so we really appreciate the opportunity to spread that upwards as well. So thank you guys for taking the time.
Thank you, Vernon. Okay. Martin, did you have something?
I was just going to give a COVID update. Nothing too exciting other than people dying in Lake County. 8 new deaths was reported today. So that's it. Be safe out there.
Thank you. Okay. Good work, everyone.
Ready for a motion, Madam Chair, to adjourn?
Okay, motion by Carol to adjourn.
Have a good Turkey Day, everybody. Be safe.
Yep, happy Thanksgiving.
See you on Monday.
See ya.
Exciting times.